Hello and welcome back to the channel. At the moment I'm stuck between waiting for my camera battery to charge up. I've got a load of stock to list, particularly the stock that I picked up on Monday from Malvern. And I'm also waiting for an eBay video to load, which seems to be taking forever. I'm beta testing it, and I've actually reduced the resolution from 1080 to 720, so it's only about 25 megabytes, but it's taking forever to upload. So I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi, but it's probably not something I'll pursue at the moment. If I have 10 or 15 items to list in a day, it's just going to take too long. Can't afford to wait that long between uploading items, because if you do continue with the upload before it's finished processing, it loses it. So what's the point? Anyway, enough of my moaning about eBay. Don't often moan about it, but it does have its moments. Oh yeah, and another little issue that's going on with eBay at the moment is on my customer feedback or buyer feedback. When I look at my sold listings, it tells me that I haven't left feedback for the buyers. But when I try and leave feedback, it says I've already left feedback. Anyway, check on the buyers' profiles, and sure enough, because I've got my settings for automatic feedback once the buyer's paid, sure enough, there it is, it's there. So there's a little glitch at the moment on eBay that tells you haven't left feedback when in fact you have. When I say you, I'm on about me as the seller. Anyway, so while I'm waiting for all this exciting activity to come to a close, I thought I would take this opportunity to something I've been thinking about it for a while, but just a very quick 1-minute demonstration on how I clean old brass, or to that extent copper pots or vases, for example. Those of you that have watched any of my previous videos, I often refer to the fact that I don't polish any of my metalware in particular, but what I do is I do make them presentable and fit to sell to a customer, especially if they're going to be putting the item in their house. I really don't want my customer opening their box to find, dirty, rusty old item in there, even if it is original, because of course you only get original once, and by cleaning it or doing anything at all to it, you are impacting on that originality. So I don't restore items, let me put it that way. I do clean them though and make them presentable. And in this video I'll show you how I cleaned up one of the brass pots that I bought from Malvern on Monday, and I'll do a before and after. So there are a couple of little tips which I'll do a voiceover while I'm doing it, and I'll explain what those tips are. So all these tips are based on my personal experience. I'm not a professional restorer. It's just bits and pieces I've learned over the years now, and they seem to work for me anyway. So the first tip when cleaning up a brass pot is don't polish it. If your customer wants to polish it, let them do it. But I recommend not polishing it, and in that way you're retaining the antique or vintage patina. And as we now know, patina or patination is the chemical reaction of the metal to oxygen, and that darkens it, gives it that beautiful deep brown, bronze, gold colour. And also verdigris is a form of patination, I guess. Again, that's all it is a chemical reaction. that you typically get on copper and metalware like that. The red metals, as they call them. Oh yeah, and when I refer to red metals, they are metals that are based on the element copper, which, as we know, and again, if you watched my previous film about identifying copper, brass or bronze, you'll know that copper has a red hue to it compared to brass and bronze. You can check that film out if you want to watch or learn a little bit more about that. The second tip I'd give you is I would recommend that you never use a clear wax on any metal. It leaves or can leave a white sheen on the metal. So I always use black wax. For me, it seems to bring out a deep luster and accentuates the patination. So you're not removing it, you're not stripping it off, you are purely enhancing it. So I'm actually thinking on this occasion that the white residue left in the embossed part of the design is part of the old painted finish of the pot. So I'm not going to over wax that, to remove it, and it will show through anyway at the end if it is white paint. The wax won't remove white paint, but it'll darken it slightly. But hopefully it won't do any damage. Anyway, you'll have to let me know what you think at the end. So the first thing I always do is to give the brass pot a very light brush down with a clean brush, just to remove any dust or contaminants that may be sat on the surface. It's important to use a clean, gentle or soft paintbrush so you don't scratch the surface of the brass. I will do the edge at the top and the rim inside just for aesthetic reasons, but I leave the verdigris and the patination as is inside the pot. It's not part of the aesthetic for me, the inside of the pot. So all I do is brush out the loose, flaky verdigris that is inherently part of an antique or vintage brass pot such as this one. So very lightly brush it out, tip it out, and for me that's job done. So my third tip is obviously using the black wax. Now, you don't need to use a lot. You can see this can's pretty empty, but that's because I've had it about 2 or 3 years now. It goes a long way, so little is more in this case. Again, I'm obviously using a trusty old soft paintbrush, or as I call it now, my old wax brush. Probably seen better days, but it's perfect for what I need it for. You can get into all the cracks and crevices with it, and it also helps remove any of the final bits of debris, dust, etc. that may be lingering there. So as I say, you don't need too much at all. It goes a long way, and you can almost immediately see an improvement in the patina on this brass pot. So once you've finished applying the wax, the next stage is to leave it for about 20 minutes to start to harden. I then use an old cloth to wipe it down. This isn't polishing it, it's purely helping to harden it, and you can see already the impact it's having. It's giving it a shine, but without polishing it.
final stage is to buff it up with a clean cloth. This will bring a glow to the finish of the metal, in this case brass, and give it that really appealing vintage or antique patination. So here we can see the finished result. On the left is the pot prior to cleaning and waxing it, and on the right you can see a much deeper patination, but it's not polished, and that's the critical thing. It's actually brought out remnants of the old painted finish. So this must have been a cold painted brass pot back in the day in India when it was made, and you can just about see some of the red paint, original red paint that's left on it. So here's a little bonus example, and it's the copper pot that I picked up from Malvern. A lot of the green verdigris that builds up over age. And you can see inside the verdigris that's built up over the years, and the lime scale obviously being used as a planter, filled with soil possibly. Also, it's got a really nice deep brown copper patina, so we definitely don't want to lose that. So we'll follow the process. The first job is to brush out all of the loose debris from inside the pot. I'm also wearing a mask, which is very important because you don't want to be inhaling dust or the debris that's coming out of here. Now I will wash this brush out as well at the end, make sure it's all clean, and hopefully I can use it again. Now, if you want to get rid of the verdigris completely, like I have here, as you can see, it's completely gone now, apart from that one major, well, it's not really verdigris now, but it's a little bit of damage to the surface of the metal. I'm not going to get rid of that. But you can see all of the green verdigris has gone, because it was most unattractive. The trick to getting rid of it is to use a solution of vinegar with a small amount of salt dissolved in it, and you have to make sure it's completely dissolved in it because you don't want it abrasive as such. You can see completely gone now, all that green verdigris. I've got a very old mixture that I've had for years and years of this solution, and it's a little bit of a magic solution, to be honest. And here it is. That was full 3, 4, 5 years ago. You really don't want to smell it, so I always use a mask when I'm using it. But that solution of salt and vinegar, just very gently brushed on to the verdigris, will remove it completely without damaging, in my opinion anyway, the overall vintage or antique patina of the copper. And the next stage, given it's a chamber pot, is to wipe it down with some disinfectant. We'll then let it dry, and we can give it a final wax and buff. I think it's just really important to be on the safe side when you're selling stock like this, and this disinfectant will certainly do the job. Definitely smells very nice now. There we go. So we've let the disinfectant dry, and now we'll give it a final wipe down before we wax it, just to make sure it's completely dry and there's no debris remaining in here at all. There you go. So yeah, we have taken out the verdigris from inside, but I think it was definitely best to be safe than sorry. And the customer can rest assured it's nice and clean inside. So we'll follow the process. Small amount, very small amount of black wax. not cheap wax, so you don't want to waste it. You'll end up rubbing most of it off. And there we go. Hopefully you can see the difference there, the before and the after. It has a brass handle. Good example there of the difference between the brass, which is the more gold colour, and the deeper, more earthy tone, red tone of the copper. A little bit more around here, tiny bit of. Now this bit of verdigris there is pretty ingrained. I'm not going to try and remove that any more than the wax has helped it anyway, so that's going to stay as is. Just that's a bit of its story, that is really. You see that? There you go. And a little bit on the brass always helps. Get into the grooves around where the brass handle is attached to the copper body of the chamber pot. So, having left it for about 20 minutes for the wax to harden, we can give it a rub down now. So this isn't polishing it. No wax on the very bottom. You don't want that transferring onto any surfaces at the client's home. A little rub around the rim on the inside. And then the final stage of the process is to buff the chamber pot up with a nice clean polishing cloth. I'm not going to worry too much about the inside. It's just part of its life story. It's cleaned out, there's no loose debris. The brass handles looking good. Retain that antique vintage patina on the copper. And to avoid fingerprints, you could be wearing gloves, I suppose, but in this instance I'm not. So we're not polishing it back to its new-like state, it's just giving it a nice, lovely, antique vintage glow. And there we go. I'm sure you can see the difference now. And that's what it's all about.
So the final tip I recommend is I don't ever polish up the base of the feet. Because if you do that and a customer then decides to put it on a white carpet or on a white painted windowsill or wherever they choose to put it, there is a risk that some of that black wax, if it hasn't been hardened properly, will transfer into their home, which you really don't want. A funny story, I was at a market once and directly opposite me there was a dealer, and they'd got a lot of what I would consider to be over polished, over restored furniture. And this lady in very white expensive jeans came up and sat on one of the chairs, and when she got up and wandered off, she hadn't noticed, of course, and neither had her partner, but she'd got brown wax residue all over her backside. And off she went into the crowd, none the wiser. Whether anybody told her or not, I have no idea. I couldn't bring myself to let her know. But yeah, so little tip there, if you are going to wax polish furniture or any items, just be aware that if it's not thoroughly polished out and hardened, then it can easily transfer onto whatever, white jeans or windowsills and carpets. And lastly, of course, use a very soft cloth to bring out the luster. That does the job for me. I don't go any further than that. And that's about the extent of my restoration, to be honest. So hopefully you can see the difference, the before and after on this particular brass pot.
And the copper pot that I picked up from Malvern.
Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear if you have any red hot tips that would be new to me. So add them in the comments below. And if you want to support our little channel, growing little channel now, we've got over 250 subscribers. Please like, comment, subscribe, and what would be really helpful would be if you share the video. I think that, so I'm told that does help grow the community. Right, I hope you found this useful. A few little tips in there based on my personal experience. As ever, I'll see you next time. Take care, stay safe.